What's happening, Sip and Chill family? It is your guy, Coach Reg, back for another edition of Sip and Chill with Coach Reg. And I am so very excited to have you here with me. Thank you for being here. Hope your week has been phenomenal. Your day has been even better, and that your weekend will be that much more exciting. So yeah, it's your guy, Coach Reg, relationship coach, founder of Are You Coached, a relationship coaching platform geared toward helping individuals identify, participate, strengthen, and sustain relationships. And what we've created here is a virtual lounge that can be viewed in two places, Facebook and YouTube. So excited to have you here in whichever lounge you're choosing to view in. And so, yeah, the virtual lounge is intended to help members identify, participate, strengthen, and sustain relationships as well. And so who am I? Yeah, I told you I'm the founder of Are You Coached. I've had an opportunity to be featured in media, some internationally globally syndicated podcasts and radio programs. You can totally get out to our website at areyoucoached.com and learn about those. You can also, if you follow us on Facebook, you can see that content there as well. And of course, on YouTube. So yeah, you can learn a little bit more about me and what we do, who our clients are. Yeah, let me tell you about that quickly. My clients are high-achieving professional men and women, those who have attained many of their professional goals, but may not yet have the interpersonal relationship that best serves and or complements him or her. And we coach around their concerns, because here's the thing. I think that people desire quality connections, and some of us recognize that our way isn't working or we're not getting the outcomes. And so they recognize it's an inside job. And so that's what I appreciate. People who are savvy enough to recognize that I don't have all the answers. Not that I'm perfect, but objectivity and clarity is what will serve me to get the better outcomes, right? So that's what my clients, that's what we work on. And I'm excited. And I think they are too, because they are appreciative of their outcomes as well. So yeah, excited to be here. Now, I know that this topic is a little, I'll say heavy, but it really isn't. It's something that I think if we focus on and pay more attention to or become more aware of, it will serve us. It will support us when we're considering relationships. It will serve us in existing relationships if we choose to apply it. Now, before I get into that, I want to share with you that I am a coach. I'm not a therapist. I am not a counselor, okay? Coaching is intended to help people get to their clarity by asking questions that cause you to think. That's the equivalent of homework, right? Because it's not an easy answer like, hey, what do you want to eat? It's what prompts this choice? What prompts this thought? What do you feel? It's questions that cause you to consider your ways and consider why you are where you are, why you feel as you do. And again, I'm not a therapist and I'm not a counselor. That's a completely different genre. It's all in the family of mental health. And that's something else I think that we should pay more attention to. And stop taking for granted that we're okay because we've been here and we've been savvy in some of our endeavors in life and we are accomplished in certain areas, but interpersonally we struggle. So just like you invested in your education for whatever your chosen profession is, coaching is an investment also. And the good news about it is you're going to have takeaways and results that will serve you, be you choosing or considering a relationship, choosing a person, or strengthening an existing relationship. So it really comes down to what you desire. But understand, it is not an expenditure. It's an investment, a worthwhile investment if your life, your loves, and relationships mean and matter that much to you. So yeah, excited to be here. Now, I have to tell you, I want to share, because I said momentarily a minute ago that we are on two platforms. So those of you seeing this on Facebook, please, if you support the brand, and I believe you do, been rocking with me for about a year now. It's been great. Please go out to our YouTube channel. And I think I know it's in the comments. It's in the description of the show. And you can get it at bit.ly Coach Reg YouTube. And what I'd like you to do is subscribe to the channel. Okay. I'd also like you to promote it to those persons who are not on Facebook, because everyone isn't. And so I want as much exposure to this content as we can make happen, because I believe it's just that valuable. Okay. So now that we've gotten that out of the way, right, let's kind of get into it. Last week was an excellent topic. We talked about EQ, emotional intelligence, and love and relationships. And what I realized is that it was familiar to some, but not to as many as I thought. And that's okay. Because again, this is my whole, if I can share something with you that helps you grow and be better, yeah, that's what this is. I want there to be value here. That's the purpose of the content that we share here, that it adds value to your life and that it helps you grow, right? And I appreciate the feedback from those of you who've let me know that, that the content is indeed helping you in your relationships. I totally appreciate it because that's why we do it. Now, there are those who may need more personalized individual help, and that's what you can do. You can book us out at bit.ly Coach Reg session if coaching is something that you're interested in or believe you could benefit from. I promise you can, but that's more for you to know, right? And to figure out, and we can figure that out together. Okay. So yeah, I just wanted to say that I understand this last week's topic was a little deep, right? This one will be also, but hopefully not as much, because again, it focuses on the individual. And so this week we're going to look at improving emotional intelligence. We looked at how it applied or how it could be applied in love and relationships last week, but I think we need to start with the individual. Okay. Oh, also too, I wanted to say, if you have, for those of you on Facebook, right? If you accept the Facebook permissions from StreamYard, I can see your name. Otherwise, I'll just see Facebook user. I will respond to your questions. I will answer you as best I can, but I just wanted to let you know that that's how I'll know it's you. And those on YouTube, hey, just leave your comments if you choose, thumbs up or what have you. So definitely that's appreciated also. So again, improving emotional intelligence is what we're going to look at. So some of you know that what we do is we ask questions throughout the week and we post them in Facebook, and there's some answers and people choose to respond. And so I've chosen a couple of the questions and responses that I wanted to kind of lead us into our topic of improving emotional intelligence. So I'd asked, one of the questions I had posed this week was, when you become frustrated with someone who's not emotionally present in the moment, what adjustments do you make? Nikki said she assesses the situation and perhaps revisits at a time that's conducive for both parties, where they can be fully engaged. At that point, if there's no genuine interest given to the topic, I might withdraw permanently. Depends on how much time I've invested with the individual. How has past relationships affected your willingness to participate? How has past relationships affected your willingness to be patient and tolerant of others? Angela says, it was procrastination that drove me to do certain things and purchase her own tools. Her patience and being tolerant of others is circumstantial. Terry said flat out, my patience is very short. I have no tolerance, none. Now, I have to tell you, number one, I appreciate the responses from Nikki, from Angela, and Terry, and they were thoughtful. But what I also detected was some frustration, right? And that's really what I wanted to kind of start with and just ask you a few more questions, right? And by the way, feel free to, again, type your questions in. Let me know it's tracking for you and it's making sense. So let me ask you, does the idea of being emotionally aware, present, or available to people in your life frustrate you? Have you ever asked yourself, why am I frustrated? Ever thought they're not worth the effort because they'll never change or they don't care? It's understandable to become frustrated in relationships when you don't feel like you're being heard, right? And we've talked about that in previous topics about agreements and conversations, and not just continuing to have conversations, having agreements that support and serve the relationship and not just existing. How do you manage your frustration? Do you just throw up your hands and say, the heck with this? Have you become that disconnected that you're like, well, and it begs the question, why? What is it about the person, the situation? Terry's response was, I'll be honest with you, I'll say concerning, because although we focus on interpersonal romantic relationships are relationships. And so, emotional intelligence is important for no matter the relationship, right? And so it becomes, who do we give attention and time to and why? And so it's important for us to be clear on that, how we're feeling, less about the person, because the person, they're being who they are. The grace or the patience or the tolerance that you choose to extend to that relationship, that's your choice. And what we're talking about is emotional intelligence, right? Why do we do the things? And maybe some people in your life shouldn't be in your life. If we're clear on our values, that's going to help us determine if some people should stay, who should go. But if you're not clear and you're not really thinking about why, and you just say, I'm mad at this, listen, any relationship, there's a shared responsibility. Okay? There's a shared responsibility. And I'm not saying that anyone is wrong. What I'm saying is it's an awareness that we should have. And we're going to get into a little bit of that, right? Next, do you want to care? Do you want to experience more quality connections and experience relationships more deeply? If you do, then consider strengthening and improving your EQ, your emotional intelligence. Again, it's a personal thing. Like I said a few moments ago, last week we looked at EQ and emotional intelligence in love and relationships. This week, we'll be exploring emotional intelligence in your life, love, and relationships. And this article is also written by Dr. Segal. I mentioned her to you last week, Dr. Jean Segal. Melinda Smith, Lawrence Robinson, and Jennifer Shubin. They get the credit for the article that we're going to reference in our discussion, okay? So what is EQ? We defined it last week as a commonly defined as a set of emotional and social skills that collectively establish how well we perceive and express ourselves and others, develop and maintain social relationships, cope with challenges, manage stress, and make decisions. Emotional intelligence is commonly defined by 4 attributes: self-management, self-awareness, social awareness, and relationship management. And we're going to look at each of those, okay? Self-management suggests you're able to control impulsive feelings and behaviors, manage your emotions in healthy ways, take initiative, follow through on commitments, and adapt to changing circumstances. We're responsible for ourselves, right? And all those situations can be upsetting. It's particularly those that are when people really upset you, or situations where, like for me, and I remember years ago, when I became angry, particularly when I was married, to be honest, because experiencing divorce is a tenuous and it's a stressful time. And I'm sure for those of you who've been married and divorced can appreciate that. And your spouse, or your soon-to-be ex-spouse, or even your ex-spouse, can still be a challenge, to the end where if you're not thoughtful, you could compromise your liberty because you're that angry, you're that upset. And this is where self-management comes in. You have to ask yourself some key questions. What matters most to you? In other words, you want to be smarter than the moment of that emotion. Does that make sense? I'm not suggesting it's easy to do, but I'm telling you it's necessary. You got to think about big picture. You really, really do. And some people we can let ourselves go there, and we feel justified. But we're talking about emotional intelligence, which suggests that there's some intellect, there's some awareness. We're not going to, we here at RU Coach do not ascribe to somebody made me do something. No, we chose, and you have to accept that responsibility. It's not popular, but it's true. Self-management. I get being upset. I get being wanting to get at somebody. I promise I do. But you have to ask yourself, is it worth your liberty? Is it worth your life? What about if you make that choice? How many other people will be impacted by that decision because you were unable to, or better yet, unwilling to, or chose not to practice self-management? Self-awareness is where you recognize your own emotions and how they affect your thoughts and behavior. You know your strengths, your weaknesses, and you have self-confidence. Self-awareness, right? How many of us really are self-reflective, introspective over past relationships that have failed, relationships that we're currently in, right? How many of us actually check in with ourselves? Yes, there's a check-in that I encourage folks to consider if they're in a relationship with their person, right? But we're talking about you, the individual, right? You know, I work with individuals. I will work with couples. Let me be very clear. Absolutely, because the couples are working together, but I work with them as individuals and to ensure that they're on the right track together, right? To coach them around that. But primarily the focus is on the individual because it starts with the person. It's the person being clear on who they are. Self-awareness suggests that you are. Yeah. 3, social awareness. You have empathy. You actually care about other things besides yourself. Some people identify as empaths. Fellas, listen to me. We do too, particularly those of us who have been husbands, fathers, in committed relationships. Yeah, this is not a woman thing. This is not a man thing. It's gender irrelevant. It applies to each of us, regardless of your gender, regardless of who you choose to love, regardless of who's special to you in your life. Emotional intelligence is a worthwhile skill and muscle to strengthen, skill to develop and muscle to strengthen. You have empathy. You can understand the emotions, needs, and concerns of other people. You pick up on emotional cues. You feel comfortable socially and recognize power dynamics in a group or an organization. You know, sadly, there's so many people who are not socially aware because you got to remember, most people are innately selfish, only think about themselves. Everything revolves around them. It's I, and very little we or you. Think about people who actually, think about this for a second. How many times have you greeted someone and said, hello, how are you? And they said, hello, how are you? There was a question, there was a greeting and a question, and you were met with or that person responded with the same. So it's did you even hear me? You know, it's people that you pass and they don't even speak because they don't feel they have to. Or when you speak to someone, and again, the greeting is they say hello to you, or you say hello to them, I'm sorry. And it misses. And so what I'm saying to you is social awareness, being aware, again, we are innately selfish and we have to strive to be selfless. Consider someone in a relationship, having empathy, being concerned about others, genuinely not allowing frustration or the sins of others, imposing those on people that you have yet to meet or had nothing to do with that pain or frustration that someone else caused you. Relationship management. You know how to develop and maintain good relationships, communicate clearly, inspire and influence others. You work well in a team and manage conflict. Something I want to tell you is that when we're talking about emotional intelligence, again, it's an emotional quotient, much like your IQ, right? Intelligence quotient. It speaks to how well you grasp, how well you understand. You could even say IQ is your academic prowess, but EQ is your emotional prowess. Okay, it's your awareness. And so these skills, right? This emotional intelligence that we're talking about improving will serve you both in your personal lives and relationships, as well as your professional relationships. That's why I thought this was important. This is not, although we focus on romantic relationships and the content supports interpersonal relationships, understand that these soft skills, should you choose to develop them, will serve you in no matter the environment and or relationship. I told you my goal is to add value to your lives. I know I do, but I do. I'm gonna say that. That's not cocky or arrogant. It's true. You can look at the content if you don't believe me. Those of you who are new to me, that's what this is about. I want you to win. I want you to go be great. We talked about that last week, right? So why is emotional intelligence so important? Kind of touched on this a moment ago. As we know, some of the smartest people in the world live the most unfulfilled lives. may even be smart and successful, but their lives are unfulfilled because they don't have relationships. They got a bunch of stuff, got the planes, the boats, the cars, the trips, clothes, but the relationships, the things that matter, are lacking. Why is that? Probably one of the 4 reasons we already talked about, right? So yeah, you may know people who are academically brilliant, but yet are inept and unsuccessful at work or their interpersonal relationships. Intellectual ability, again, your IQ, isn't enough to achieve success in life on its own. IQ and EQ exist in tandem and are most effective when built off of one another. How do I say this? So, you know, we talked about how well you may do professionally, right? But relationships are necessary. Part of your professional success is tied to relationship building. And if your relationship success, your professional success is tied to relationship building, and that's an IQ, EQ thing, isn't it fair to say that your personal relationship success would be tied to the same? It's your aptitude. It's your intentional desire to learn, to pay attention, to be sharp, to pay attention to cues, what people are showing you, not just their verbals, but the nonverbals, right? Paying attention to what's not said, hearing what's not said, paying attention to what's being shown you, not what's just being said to you verbally. Emotional intelligence affects performance at work. High EQ can help you navigate social complexities of the workplace, lead and motivate others to excel in their careers. Again, this EQ works in your professional endeavors as well. Apologize for that. So again, you think about EQ in a sense of when it comes to gauging important job candidates, many companies now rate EQ as important as technical ability and employ EQ testing before hiring. It depends on what you do, right? That is something that can happen where you will be tested to see not just how technically or professionally apt you are or capable you are, but you may be tested to see how well you do emotionally in situations, how you manage tough situations, especially if the job or task that you're being considered for is demanding, is stressful, has a lot of quick response tasks and jobs associated with it. You can't be somebody who crumbles under stress, right? That's why EQ matters. And it's okay if you're not as strong as you can be. Guess what? None of us are. It starts with awareness. It starts with the desire to want to be better. How do I get better? EQ affects your your physical health. If you're unable to manage your emotions, you're probably not managing your stress well either. Can lead to serious health problems. I'm not sure why I'm sweating, but I am. My gosh, it must be my lighting. Uncontrolled stress raises your blood pressure, suppresses the immune system, increases the risk of heart attacks, strokes, and contributes to infertility. Imagine that. You see, this is the thing about stress that some of us don't recognize, that stress, it's not the things that we can see, right? It's much like the whole EQ thing. It's not just what someone tells you can see, it's what you can't see. Stress hits us and affects us all differently. So it goes to those self-check-ins, what I was talking about a moment ago. Do we stop to check in to ensure that we are on track? If we're doing okay for ourselves, never mind again another person, but how we are showing up, right? And as we show up, are we also aware of how others are showing up? Your relationships. By understanding your emotions and how to control them, you're better able to express how you feel, understand how others are feeling, and that allows you to communicate more effectively and forge stronger relationships in your personal life. Again, empathy. Pay attention to body language, right? Pay attention to tone. Try to be less concerned with how you're feeling Not that how you feel matters less. That's not what I'm saying. But being concerned about not only how you're feeling, but how the people in that environment, in that conversation, in that room are. Notice their body language. Notice what's being said. Are they open? Are they receptive? Are they closed? Pay attention to those things, right? This is all talk. This is all around building your EQ. Being in tune with your emotions serves a purpose, connecting you to other people in the world around you. Simply stated, it allows you to recognize who's for you and who's not. Even those who seem to be. You still got to pay attention to actions. You've heard me talk about that before. We've talked about that before. I'm sorry. It's actions and words, right? It's what's said, it's what's done. And it's also that third piece, which is what isn't said, what isn't verbalized. But you can tell if somebody tells you, oh yeah, we're real cool. But as soon as you turn your back, the daggers come. And you know it. I mean, if we're honest, we know who's for us. But in relationships, okay, let's tie this back to relationships because that's what I want to be clear on. Again, I noticed some of the responses, at least they seemed frustrating. They seemed like the person was frustrated with people or with, just like no patience, no tolerance. And it just begs the question, what has happened? Because is the frustration greater than the desire to have a quality relationship? I hope it isn't, because those past relationships or an existing relationship, if it is not serving you, if the person is disinterested in building and working on whatever the challenges are, there's nothing you can do. And so again, less about the other person and more about the choice that the person in the mirror has to make. And I know that's uncomfortable. I know it's not easy, especially if your lives are intertwined, especially if it's someone you've known for a lot of years, or whatever reasons you've chosen to say, you know what? I don't know. I'm not ready to walk away from this. And listen, I'm not suggesting walking away from anything. I would encourage you to exhaust all possibilities of salvaging first. Here's why. I'm not saying stay in something that is not good for you. Please don't hear that. What I'm saying is ensure that if you choose to remove yourself from your relationship or choose to not continue with someone that you've begun to get to know because you've learned some things, that's okay. Exhaust everything that you can so that you have no regret. Now, obviously, someone like Nikki said, depends on how vested she is with the person. If she's not that vested or there's not that much runtime there, just like, I'm not doing this. And that's fair. I'm not talking about everything gets everything you got. Every person deserves that. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is there are people who their relationships that are worth salvaging, or at least making the effort, because you can't control if the other person doesn't choose to participate. You can only control your side. Oh, by the way, this is Sip and Chill, so I'm gonna take a sip. All right, let's keep going. That's pretty tasty too, by the way. Okay. So let's look at the key skills for building your EQ and improving your ability to manage emotions and connect with others, right? We talked about self-management. In order to engage EQ, you must be able to use your emotions constructively. To make constructive decisions about your behavior. When you become overly stressed, you can lose control over your emotions and the ability to act thoughtfully and appropriately. Kind of touched on that at the beginning, right? I told you about how I used to feel. And when I tell you it was bad, and I don't mean bad in the sense of, some kind of confrontation, but it was just the relationship was so challenging. I just remember kind of literally shaking, when I was around her, because it was just that uncomfortable because of all of the stuff that was like, what is going on? And much of it I didn't understand, but I was smart enough to know that I wasn't compromising my liberty for anybody. You understand what I'm saying? More than that, I considered more than me, because my choices would affect not just me, but others, i.e. my children, i.e. those who love and care for me, i.e. those who actually like having me around. I'd ask you to consider the same when you are struggling with your behavior. or if you find yourself in a situation where that's the case. Think about the time when stress has overwhelmed you. Was it easy to think clearly and make rational decisions? Probably not. When we become overly stressed, we lose the ability to think clearly and accurately and to assess emotions. Our own and others can become compromised. How we doing? I feel like I'm just lecturing. I don't want to do that. Any questions? Because we're going to be out of here soon. I don't think we're not going to be as long as we were last week. I'm sure some of you are excited about that. Is this making sense? Any questions? Any thoughts? Number 2, key skill, self-awareness. Managing stress is the first step to building emotional intelligence. The science of attachment. Now, we did attachment types, some months ago. I think it's in our content. You can totally see it out on YouTube. And I think, in fact, I remember the title was Who Do You Love, right? And Who Do You Love, that focused on the attachment types. And there were 4 that we looked at. I'm not going to get into those now, but if you want to go back and review it, you totally can. But the science of attachment indicates that your current emotional experience is like a reflection of your early experiences in life. Your ability to manage core feelings such as anger, sadness, fear, joy, often depend on the quality and consistency of your early life emotional experiences. Say, for example, if your primary caretaker as an infant understood and valued your emotions, it's likely your emotions have become a valuable asset in your adult life. But if your emotional experiences as an infant were confusing, threatening, or even painful, it's likely you've tried to distance yourself from them. Listen, we will definitely protect ourselves. You know, self-preservation is real. Defense mechanisms are real. We get triggered how we get triggered. This is what I meant by taking time to assess what you're feeling and why. It's important. It's important helping you to develop your emotional intelligence. How do you improve an emotional intelligence? Increasing your self-awareness, understanding why you feel. And I get that you may not know how. That's why I said at the top of this, I honestly believe many of us, if we're willing to be honest, men and women, desire deeper emotional connections. Challenge is we don't always know how to get there. And so we hit these walls, or we hide, or we mask, or we guise, or we think it's not that serious, so it's not that big of a deal, and we can just kind of wing it. No one has to know. Who's being served in that? Who's being served? Being able to connect to your emotions, having a moment-to-moment connection with your changing emotional experiences is key to understanding how emotion influences your thoughts and actions. This is what I mean by being smarter than the moment, right? Listen, peace is a constant. Being angry or jovial, happy or sad, those are conditions. There's something that may have occurred to cause you to feel it, right? But understand that it's temporary because nothing comes to stay. But peace is a constant, which is the place you want to kind of be when you make whatever choices you want to make for your decision. See, or whatever choices you have to make in your life, particularly in relationships, because you're not going to always feel that way. And there's so many people, all of us, are one bad decision away from changing the trajectory of our lives, and can be your relationship. This is why I encourage you to be mindful. We're going to get into that in a second. Be mindful of what you speak and what you say, because we don't want to say things or do things that sorry can't fix and we can't come back from. Yeah, your apology may be accepted and you may be forgiven, but it likely won't be forgotten. And therein lies the rub, which is why self-management, being aware of you, the situation, the other person, how you're feeling in that moment, because it's ever changing, particularly in those stressful interactions and exchanges you have with people that you care about and they care about you. It's not always easy. This is why having rules and agreement, this is what I talk about in my model. You got to have a way back. You got to understand what's going on And the more agreements you can establish in your relationship and negotiate down, I'm not going to get into all that now, but the more agreements you can have will lead to the more success that you have in relationships with the right person who's interested in which, and you both are interested in having a successful, thriving, and flourishing relationship. And yeah. My goodness. Let's keep going. Do you experience feelings that flow? Encountering one emotion after another as your experiences change from moment to moment. I mean, do you just have like this waterfall of feelings? You may. That's something that only you can answer, right? Do you experience individual feelings and emotions such as anger, fear, and joy? Which of course we tend to, it kind of shows up on our face. Just saying. It's kind of like somebody is, you're talking to someone, right? And you say, "Are you okay? Is this making sense or whatever?" And I go, yeah. And you're like, "You do know I can see you, right? Because you seem confused. Like this is not landing at all." Right. So again, whatever those emotions are, they're likely going to be present and resident on our faces, and people can see no matter what we say. Something else you want to pay attention to. If somebody tells you they're good and you can tell very well that they're not, say, listen, how about we pick this up another time? Because why continue down a path when you know that person is not ready to talk about, discuss, they're not receiving it, whatever the thing may be that you're observing. Again, we're talking about you paying attention to someone else. You're not only aware of what you're feeling, and yes, it's important what you want to say and share. I'm sure it is. That's not the point. And just because they're not ready to hear it doesn't mean what you have to share is less important. It's just about your awareness of the situation, and that's something that you should pursue in that moment. This is EQ, people. It's an example. Can you experience intense feelings that are strong enough to capture both your attention and that of others? Do you pay attention to your emotions? Do they factor into your decision making? Do they? Emotions are real. And it's something that we have to pay attention to, because if it's something that we're feeling, is this choice, is this thing just for us? Or could this feeling, this emotion, however strong, and if we execute said decision, what's the impact that others will feel? Is this choice of decision just going to affect me? Is this time for me to be selfish? Meaning I have to care about me more. I have to love me more because this decision supports my emotional and mental well-being long-term? Or is this decision, yes, born from feeling, but I want to be emotionally mature and aware enough of the people that will be affected by this that I consider them? I promise you, as mentioned to you before, IQ is one thing, EQ is another, but they both can work in tandem. They totally can. Mindfulness, kind of touched on this a moment ago. Mindfulness is the practice of purposefully focusing your attention on the present moment without judgment. Mindfulness helps shift your preoccupation with thought toward an appreciation of the moment. Your physical and emotional sensations bring a larger perspective on life. Mindfulness can calm and focus you, making you more self-aware in the moment or in the process. I'm going to go back to something I said a moment ago. I didn't say this is easy. Okay. Listen, we talked about emotional intelligence being a muscle, right? Growing your muscle. It's no different than working out. When you start working out and you start exercising, you're not as strong as you're going to be if you remain consistent. You're going to get stronger. These concepts may be new. Again, if people have frustrated you in your life, I think it's fair to ask a question. Your relationships, I'm sorry, not frustrated you in your life, but if relationships have frustrated you, I think it's important to consider who you've chosen to be in relationship with and participate. It's less about the other person. It's more about the choices we're making. And listen, please don't hold someone who didn't know you. You didn't know their name. They didn't know yours. Hold them accountable for something in past hurts and experiences that you had. It's not their fault. Listen, not only is it not their fault, they may not be worthy of your getting to know them. They may not be worthy of your time. How do you know that? Because you're clear on what your values are. You're clear on what matters to you. And you've learned how to do that. I'm not saying just I know how to do it and just going to gloss over it because I don't want to be the person that says I don't know how. No. Be the person that chooses to be better. Be the person that says, yeah, I've been frustrated. I've been disappointed. I've been let down. But I still believe I can have that. I still believe that exists for me. Even if I don't experience it, I'll be prepared for it. How about that? Number 3, social awareness. Social awareness enables you to recognize and interpret mainly nonverbal cues, and how others constantly communicate. Social awareness enables you to recognize and interpret the mainly nonverbal cues others are constantly using to communicate with you. These cues let you know how others are really feeling. I'm gonna stop there for a second. Because this happens when you just meet somebody, okay? I mean, this happens when you just meet someone, you're getting to know them, you can be out socially and meet them. You can be in whatever the environment and meet them. And again, this is why you got to qualify. There are people who are polite, and then there are people who are polite and interested. Those two are mutually exclusive. You don't need one for the other, okay? You can be polite and you can be interested, but you don't have to be both. And what I'm saying to you is qualify interest. Ensure that somebody they're not just being polite, that there's a potential interest there. They don't know. You don't know. But pay attention to social cues. Pay attention to what people aren't saying, body language. If someone seems open to you, if in an existing relationship, pay attention to where that person is. They just may not be ready. Like I said a moment ago, if you're talking to someone and you can tell it's not landing, you can tell they're not in the mood, you can tell by their facial expression, they're just not ready. No big deal. Pay attention to that and say, listen, I really would like to have this conversation with you. Would you please let me know what's a good time? I'd like to revisit this. Now, if they matter to you, if you matter to them, they'll make that time. They'll make that adjustment. So I appreciate you noticing that. Keep in mind, people, hear me on this. Pay attention to your person and make sure your person is paying attention to you. This is not just for you to do this. This is for you to be aware of yourself, the relationships, and if the people that you're in relationship with are aware of you. And if they're not, it's unfortunate, but you know that and you can adjust accordingly. This is what I was saying to you. I was asking in the questions. What adjustments do you make when you recognize a person is not emotionally present? Do you just throw your hands up because I'm done with this? Or do you try to understand? Because like Nikki said, if there's an investment there, why would you not make the effort? Is it because I don't know how, I don't want to, they're not worth it? Okay. If that's all true, I go back to the mirror because that has nothing to do with that person. It has everything to do with the person in the mirror making the choices. There's more, but I'm going to skip through because I don't want to keep us. Lastly, relationship management. Becoming aware of how effectively you use nonverbal communication. It is impossible to avoid sending nonverbal messages to others about how we think or feel about something. Because again, our facial expressions, the emotional parts of our brain is always on. And even if we ignore the messages others won't. Recognizing nonverbal messages that we send to others can play a huge part in improving our relationships. Listen, if you're in an existing relationship, this matters, right? We don't want to hurt each other. I don't think that is the goal. I don't think that is the intent at all. But the thing is that we're human and we have to talk about stuff, and we're not going to always get it right. But if we discuss it, if we have agreements, if we seek to understand, we got a shot, folks. And if you're considering relationship, guess what? These are things that you can do as you start building, seeing if this person is worthy of continuing with, paying attention to if they pay attention to you. Ask questions that matter. Yeah. Lastly, learn to see conflict as opportunity to grow closer to others. We talked about this last week, didn't we? Conflicts and disagreements are inevitable in relationships. Two people can't possibly have the same needs, opinions, and expectations at all times. But it doesn't have to be a bad thing. Notice I said last week, your values don't have to be the same as long as they're complementary. How do you get to complementary? Because you respect each other, and and you're wanting to find out if there's enough good there to sustain you, even if your values are dissimilar. I'm not saying they have to be so dissimilar. That's up to the two people. And what your values are, you value what you value. But yeah, does it work better if they're congruent? Sure it does. But just because they're dissimilar, I don't know that it is a deal breaker, is what I'm saying. So yeah, that's where we are, folks. That's where we are on improving emotional intelligence. Like I said, I want you to win. I want you to go be great. I want you to win individually, and I want you to win collectively if you're in a relationship. Doesn't matter who you love. Nope, sure doesn't. It just means that you are prepared, right? Emotionally. You know, those of you who have extremely high IQs, EQ will serve you just as well as your high IQ did professionally and does professionally. Okay. I hope this made some sense. Again, my heart's desire is to provide content in this space that helps you grow, that you find value in, that serves and supports you. And of course, it's high level because there's more individual work that has to be done, but that's not the intent here. The intent is to cause you to think and to maybe consider something you hadn't before. And if one of you did, then guess what? It's worth it. It's a win. I want more of you to, because guess what? We all are works in progress, right? The idea is to be better tomorrow than we were today, or be better today than we were yesterday, because none of us are promised tomorrow. Yeah, a little tip. But listen, again, hope that made some sense. Any questions before we bounce out of here? Any parting thoughts? As I said, thank you for hanging out. Definitely appreciate you subscribing to the channel. Please tell people, because there's many people who are not on Facebook, but will go to YouTube. And I would encourage you and ask you to please, share the channel with them, encourage them to like, share, and subscribe themselves, because we want to grow the community, right? So yeah, listen, have a fantastic rest of your evening, your weekend. Please stay safe. It's your guy, Coach Reg, and I love. I'll see you soon. Oh, lastly, one last thing. Next week is First Friday's VIP, so we won't be broadcasting First Friday in April. Sorry. That's for paid members that we do that offline. So yeah, excited about that. And but we'll be back the second week in April. Not sure what the topic will be. Probably won't be heavy like this though, because I think some of y'all care about that stuff that's going on with the other guy that's out there going through some things, some choices he made. But hey, that's not what we do here. We don't do gossip. We don't look at other people and say, sucks to be them. No, doesn't. Because we're all flawed and fallible, and we don't cast aspersions or disparage. Okay. So listen, again, have a great weekend. I will see you soon. You guys stay safe. It's your guy, Coach Reg, and I love. Take care. Bye.